Hello, my name is Keona Jackson, and for my capstone project, I chose to do the U.S. Indian boarding schools. U.S. Indian boarding schools began in 1819 with the Civilization Fund Act. The Congress did this to further assimilate the Native American tribes. However, the schools were established on the Indian reservations and operated by the church missionaries. This was meant to change the beliefs and the ideas of the indigenous people to fit the American lifestyle. Although this policy seemed to have worked, it was not fully successful as the children returned home to their families, continued their heritage enactments, and their traditional beliefs. However, in the 1870s, a respected military personnel, General Robert Henry Pratt, who served as the captain of a group of Buffalo soldiers and led them to the fight in the Red River War, and following that, he became the processor at Fort Marion in St. Augustine, Florida, of the Native American war criminals, began conversing with them and learning that they were actually intelligent beings who could quickly pick up the English language and American culture. So, he began to experiment on those prisoners with classes in English, arts, and craftsmanship. This showed him that other Native Americans were capable of doing the same, but by keeping them on the reservations, it was harder to eliminate the savagery within them compared to if they were going to off-reservation schools where the assimilation process could be more intense and they can control everything that native person did. Instead of doing it with the adults, he decided to do it with the young because he believed everyone was born of a blank slate. This idea quickly caught the attention of many Congress members and the government, so they instantly agreed to fund off-reservation schools that conducted this aggressive assimilation program of the Native American children into the American civilization. Robert Henry Pratt spoke against the previous actions taken out on the Native Americans by Thomas Jefferson and the U.S. government, claiming that the fighting, killing, and segregating them onto reservations was unconstructive in developing the English-speaking and industrial beings that they could be. To do this, they would kill the Indian in him and save the man. He also uses slavery as an example and said that slavery of the African descendants saved them from cannibalism and the further horror that they would have encountered in their original country of Africa. Pratt did not believe in racial superiority, but cultural superiority. And if the natives became completely colonized like that of the African people, then they would absorb into the Christian American culture also. In 1879, General Pratt founded one of the first off-reservation academies, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, located in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. This property was once an Army training school used during the Civil War. He began his recruitment out west primarily with the Lakota, Cheyenne, Pawnee, and Apache children. However, this included Alaskan Natives, American Indians, and Native Hawaiian children. Ages ranged from their early 20s, teens, and as young as 6 years old. They traveled to their new school by horseback, trains, and steamboats, and for the first year at Carlisle, there were at least 147 students to start the new school year. And unfortunately, none of the families had any say. And if they were not compliant, they were threatened at gunpoint by the military or police. Parents were not allowed to visit the children at any time while they were at school. There was to be no contact between them or the students. Some parents even followed their children and camped outside of the schools, but were eventually run off from the area. Any parent who refused to send their children definitely faced prison time, and at one point, 19 Hopi men who protested the new federally mandated law were sent to Alcatraz, a place where they held the most notorious criminals like that of Al Capone. The Carlisle Indian Industrial School mimicked that of a military lifestyle. All the children had their hair cut short, given uniforms to wear, leather shoes, and abrasive underwear. Also no longer used their native names that were given to them at birth, but had to pick an American name, or if they did not understand English, had one picked for them. One school in Canada did not care about giving them names, but gave them simply numbers like that of the Jewish people in the Holocaust. The administrators at Carlisle also took before and after photos of the children, proved the assimilation program was working. The Carlisle School became a model school for the other up-and-coming boarding schools in America and Canada, encouraging more than 350 in the USA and 139 in Canada. The boarding schools taught the children academic subjects such as math, English, and science, and religious stayed relevant such as Christianity and Catholicism so that they could unlearn their traditional practices. They also taught them a trade. The boys did industrialized work while the girls learned home skills. Pretty much the full operation of the school was supported on the backs of the children for cooking, cleaning, and gardening. Learning this seemed good for the students, but there was all sorts of abuse that was common. They would get whoopings for speaking their own language, or thrown into holding cells, or forced to do hard labor. There was also a lot of sexual abuse, and the close living quarters that they had to stay in caused a lot of sicknesses and would eventually cause death. Overall, hundreds of thousands of children attended the boarding schools, and the boarding school policy lasted over 150 years. It was until 1978 when the Indian Child Welfare Act went into effect. This policy allowed the Native parents to refuse to send their children to off-reservation schools. However, the Native American community suffered and felt disconnected from their heritage. They could not teach their children the way of their people or their language, experiencing a historical loss of 15,000 years of culture. They began to suffer from mental health issues and substance abuse at a higher national rate. They also have the highest poverty rate, and they're the least educated. Suicide is 3.2 higher than the national average. In 2016, the Northern Arapaho and Lakota tribes met with Army representatives to gain permission to exhume their children once and for all from the Carlisle School in Pennsylvania. They discovered unmarked graves and mismarked graves and would find multiple students in just one grave. They thought that there was only 100 lives that were lost, but in 2024, it was reported by the U.S. Department of Interior that there was around 973 children that died during their time at the boarding schools. In 2020, Joe Biden issued an apology to the Native American community while at a rally in Arizona. And in 2021, Canada declared September 30th the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. In America, it is recognized as a day of remembrance and to honor the survivors who showed resilience through their time at the boarding schools.